this computer. There we go. Okay. So as long as you say we're good to go.
We are good to go.
Hey there, Terainer. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I am really excited about this conversation. I remember I had a friend who was on here not long ago who started sending me photos from a photo shoot or from some kind of video thing that you're doing. She says, you've got to meet this lady. You've got to interview this woman. So I have given our listeners just a little bit of an intro about you, kind of like the high level stuff and the things that are intriguing to me. But what I'd love for you to be able to do, because they've not met you yet, and I'm sure that there will be plenty of opportunities for them to meet you in the future. But how about you give us a little bit of background on you, kind of give us a high level story and what you're doing right now that's a little unconventional and who you serve, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So I am Dr. Terainer Brown. I'm the wife of an airman. My husband is in the Air Force and mother to two beautiful children, almost 9 and 3. So pretty big age gap there.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm an educator, a scholar, an author, a speaker, and really an advocate for student success. So you said, what am I doing now? I have the unique privilege of serving as the Chief Education Officer for the United States Air Force, a really humbling opportunity to be able to support service members that are overseas. So I'm loving the work there.
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. We had discussed the first time we met that my mother took advantage of those services when I was growing up overseas. My mother graduated through the Armed Forces college education program. And so when I heard that's what you're doing, I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Yes. So really fascinating work there. And I have a lot of experience working with middle and high school, even elementary school students, and over the years have really grown a passion for helping students transition into whatever their post-secondary goals are. And my day-to-day job doesn't exactly give me the opportunity to do some of the things that I've done in the past and that I love. And so I founded an organization entitled Culture for College that gives me the ability to make a lot of those connections with younger students. So that's what I'm up to right now. And just happy to be here talking to you about some of these things.
Cool. Well, I did not expect you to say all the way down to elementary school.
Yes.
All right. So before we get into some of your other leadership stuff, which you even have degrees in that, tell us about Culture for College. Give us an understanding of, I have a middle schooler and I have a middle schooler who's like, he wants to be a gamer right now. So it's like, so kind of give us an understanding of what the overview is for Culture for College. And I love that you said whatever their post-secondary plans are.
Yes.
Right. So, and then kind of like definitely tell us how we can talk to them in elementary school.
Absolutely. So Culture for College is an organization really founded on the premise that adults that have youth and young adults in their lives really can serve as mentors. All of us, I think, if we're honest, have people throughout our lives that we have met that have served as really positive interruptions. So we are, thinking of going into one field in one way or another, and you meet someone along the way who has some experience in that field, and they give you just a little bit of guidance, maybe just enough to set you on the path. Have you thought about this program? Have you talked to this person? And so Culture for College, for me, gives me a space to encourage other adults to create a little bit of room in their life to have conversations with our youth and young adults about what their future plans are. They are our future. We will all be much older at some point. And so it will be left into the hands of our youth. And so what better way than to set us all up for success than to pour into them? And so,
if you've listened to my podcast at all, you know that this resonates with me. It's like we are the role models.
Absolutely.
For the future generations.
That's right.
I'm going to ask you already to go a little bit deeper on this positive interruptions thing. I've never heard that phrase. I love
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And I know I can identify women in my life and even a few
Mhm.
men in my life who played that role. And I never would have called it that.
That's right. That's right. So that phrase I actually can't take full credit for. I do have quite a few colleagues who work in education, and I remember hearing that phrase and being struck by it in the same way that you just were, right? And I used to work with this college access and success program, and I remember hearing someone say that and thought, I remember thinking to myself, gosh, that is the perfect way to describe what I hope to
Mhm.
be in the lives of, the children that I encounter.
Yeah.
I think that there is so much as adults that we can learn from children if we just talk to them and listen to them. And in many ways, they will provide indications about what their passions are, what they are really great at doing, and the difference that they're hoping to make in this world. And so along the way, when we're connecting with children and you hear them saying things like, I think I really want to help people that are experiencing homelessness, for an example. Let's say this is a 12, 13, 14-year-old. They're getting to the age where they really can start to do something about it. It could be something small in their neighborhood. It could be, um, connecting with a community serving organization of some sort. It could really be just putting together a plan for something that they themselves can do later on in the future. And so, as an adult, having more understanding about big picture life,
Right.
giving them just a little bit of space and helping them think through some of those details. And I remember some of that going on when I was younger. Always wanted to teach children in some way. And my grandmother at the time, there was a school that was closing down not too far from our house. And she went and got all these desks and bought a chalkboard and some other things, set up our basement to look like a school. And I was the teacher, and I'd give out little assignments and things of that nature. I mean, just really taking something that I thought I wanted to do, which it has worked itself out.
You can see it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And created a space where I had this little, hey, I really want to teach, and giving me an opportunity to really pursue that.
So for those of us listening to these conversations, we adults, I don't know, maybe I'm of an age, but it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And
Right.
that's just the way we ask kids. Well, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. But even I would love for my son to say something as altruistic as I want to help homeless people. But I joked before I hit, or maybe I didn't joke before I hit record, that he wants to be a gamer. And
Right.
so I was watching a show yesterday where the son really wanted to be a gamer, and he's like, I want to design code. And I'm like, I wish he wanted to design code. I'm pretty sure all he wants to do is play. But
Right.
are there other things that we can look for as kids are kind of getting into certain ages that we could say, well, it may be something in this kind of service area or this kind of service area?
Sure.
This is me just
Sure.
asking as a mom.
That's right. That's right. So I find that asking children questions about the world around them,
Mm,
giving them space to be curious about things that exist outside of their bubble, will really start to cue families into what is it that they see outside of just the things that they enjoy doing.
that's good.
And so, building that curiosity, I think, is really important.
Yes.
Talking to them about the work that you do during the day in
Oh, I do
ways
that
that,
every day.
absolutely, in ways that
Let
they'll
me tell you
listen.
about my day in ways that they'll listen. True. Yeah.
And then asking them, almost like, what did you just hear me say? What is it that you think mom does all day
Mm,
long or dad does all day long? And being honest with them about the parts of your job that you enjoy, the parts
hmm
that are really challenging, so that they can start to contextualize bigger picture. What does it mean to go to work? All of those things will help them start to think about the kind of professional environment they'd like to create around themselves. Do they like to be around people? Do they prefer to work alone? Do they like to work on tasks, from start to finish? Do they like to work on several projects at once? And so just having those kinds of conversations are helpful. I think also paying attention to things in school that interest them.
Right.
Right. If they're really into math, for an example, something like, game design would be a good fit. You do have to understand math, to be able to code. If they're really into science, maybe they can, and also, loving games, for an example, can be on more of the design side of things. We've gotten really creative in the educational space with trying to create virtual ways to help children connect with different aspects of the world. And so there are other kinds of scientists besides just the computer engineers that work on video game design.
Yeah.
And so, just trying to connect things that they're really good at with things that they're impassioned about.
Right.
And then asking them the question, money aside, if there were an infinite number of resources, what kind of a difference would you like to make in this world if you could? Right? If someone gave you the stick for the day and you could make a difference in this world, what would that look like?
Oh my gosh, that's a fabulous one.
Filtering all of that information, here are the things that they're really good at. Here's the difference that they would make if they had all the resources they could consider. And then what do they just love doing? I think all of those things will start to give some information about where is this all going?
Yeah.
And then how can I help? How can I, as the adult in their life, how can I help? How can I connect them with opportunities and people that are in those fields? I wrote a blog post not long ago that's entitled "Work Your Career Path, Not Fast Food." And that's no knock on fast food, right? I did that for a while too.
I don't know why we don't knock on fast food. I think it's okay to knock on fast food.
It is more ideal for students to go and work an internship in an area that will give them some information about if this career field is the right fit, as opposed to, right, if you want to be a business owner, maybe working in fast food that's a good opportunity for you. But otherwise, having students gain some exposure in the field that they think they want to go into is a better way to set them up for success.
So you said you wanted to be a teacher from when you were little, and obviously your grandmother saw that in you. What would you consider to be the why that you do all of this?
It's a very good question. I really believe in our youth, and I have really high expectations of them. I think that so much has happened in our world that makes their pursuits so much easier than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. And so my expectation as an educator is that they take full advantage of that and that they approach problems with all of the resources that they have. I think about when I was in school, I didn't have technology as readily available as I do now. So when I'm working with, someone 15, 16, 17 years old, and they can't figure out how to use technology, I'm not buying it. You were born with this stuff, right?
He was issued one in 6th grade and it comes home and it's like,
that's exactly right.
I learned how to type on a electric typewriter, for crying out loud. So, an IBM.
Absolutely.
So no, I think that's just such a good point though. A lot of times and right now, especially, it's so easy to focus on the suffering of our kids
Yep.
because they are 5 to 6 months behind in general on their learning and social, and they have all kinds of challenges because of what's happening in the middle of this. Because I don't know who's going to be listening to this podcast 10 years from now, but we're still in the middle of a pandemic.
That's right.
And so, but to be willing to, from an optimistic standpoint, turn it
That's
around and
right.
say, but yet you still have all these things,
That's
right?
exactly right.
I think that's really, really good. So you are definitely a leader. You have a master's in, wait a minute, I got to look at your degrees. You have a Master of Arts in Leadership, a PhD in Educational Leadership and Research and Policy,
Yes.
on top of a sociology, degree in fine arts, concentration in sociology from, good grief, Wayne State, Colorado. Where else do you have? I'm sorry, there's just a
No,
lot
that's
here,
okay.
which is
Yeah.
beautiful. I
Yes.
love education.
That's right.
So
That's right. I did my undergraduate degree at Wayne State University. I started off as a dance education major, and then I did a minor in sociology. I became really fascinated with trying to understand how to help students make the transition from high school into higher education.
as far back
And
as your undergrad.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
When I talk about work your career pathway and not fast food, I took my own advice.
Mm,
And so when I was in college, I intentionally sought opportunities that would allow me to connect with youth. And one of those opportunities was working with the Michigan Gear Up program. So this was many, many, many years ago. And working in that Gear Up program showed me that there are programs that are trying to tackle the issue of helping students who have informational gaps and understandings about how to transition into the next step, figure some of those pieces out. And so we'd go into different high schools that were economically disadvantaged and work with those students to help fill in some of those knowledge gaps. So it was really great work. I was studying to be a teacher at the time, working with some fantastic mentors. And so I really just fell in love with that work and wanted to understand bigger picture, why, certain communities were making, better educational progress than others. And so sociology helped me understand some of those pieces.
Well, and it's interesting sometimes how we pick up on one piece of what we're doing and then it like makes all the puzzle fall together, right?
It sure did. It
Yeah.
sure did. So when we moved to Colorado, like I said, I'm married to an airman. We moved to Colorado in 2012. I had a decision to make. I'd been teaching middle and high school dance, loving the work that I was doing there, working with the community to help those students really gain some exposure and experiences outside of their community. So I had a chance to take my students to New York. I took them to Chicago. I took
Oh,
a group to
cool.
Ohio, smaller group to Canada, all to see dance, to learn about university programs that offered dance education. And we had a really good time. That was a good gig.
It sounds fun.
And when I got to Colorado, I really did have a decision to make, and I had to do a little bit of soul searching because Colorado is more of an outdoorsy state. There is some dance education happening in Colorado.
I can't
but
imagine why you'd want to be outside in Colorado. That makes no sense.
That's right. That's right. It was beautiful there. And so I really had to dig deep. And so you asked me the question of, why all of this? It was to, outside of my own experiences, like my children are going to be fine. But, if I'm being honest, it's a little bit of like survivor's remorse, right?
Guilt, survivor's guilt.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. Like, so what can I do to give back to my community as best as I can? And so that's when I decided to study higher education, to study student affairs in higher education, and connect myself with work that I felt like I was purposed to do.
Mm.
And
There's-
so that's been the path that I've been on ever since. I did my master's, as you stated, in leadership with a focus in student affairs and higher education. And then I did my PhD in educational leadership, research, and policy, and really worked to become an expert around student success and access to higher ed.
You're talking to us. That's awesome. So let's go back even further, back to that little girl with all the desks in the basement.
Mhm.
And I don't know how far back this goes because I love asking this question and I never know what I'm going to get.
Sure.
What is your earliest leadership memory? Is it something like standing in front of that little classroom and teaching, or is there something that just kind of really sticks in your mind as, yep, that's a moment that I can look back on and I kind of realized I have the ability to lead?
I think it was, I didn't really think about that moment. I haven't thought about that moment in a while until you and I began this conversation. I have a non-traditional, unconventional path to college in general. I graduated from high school. I did not go to college right away.
Okay.
I worked for a gym shoe company and was given opportunities to lead. I didn't at the time think of myself as a leader. I knew that I could multitask very well. And so I think some of those skills and my attention to detail caught the attention of the management at the time. And I'll never forget my store manager pulling me aside and saying, "Hey, have you ever thought about, management?" At the time I was working as a cashier and I hadn't. I was intentioned on going to community college at some point to just start the process of going to school. And so when you say real, an opportunity to lead, my earliest memory would be that little girl standing in front of the classroom. Now that we're having this conversation, but I think up until this point, I would have said, "Oh, it was when I was working for that gym shoe company, and I got my first store, a $500,000 store. I was 19 years old, and they entrusted me with running this. It was actually a little bit more, $600,000 worth of merchandise. I had a small team of people I was responsible for, and many of them were in high school, and so that was management, but it was also leadership because you
Sure.
are, in those positions, the top person in that store. And
Right.
so you're making lots of decisions about lots of things, but it's leading the people and pulling together a team that is as important to controlling inventory as anything. And so, yes, but I think if I had to think back to that very first memory, it would be that little girl standing in front of that classroom, confident, having fun, and feeling like I was teaching something. I can't really remember what it was though at this point.
You know what? Here's what I'm learning though, as I ask women these questions. And I love how this one actually played out. You said you were confident and you were having fun. And a lot of times what I'm finding is that these memories are there and they get suppressed somehow.
Mhm.
Or or somehow something happens in our lives that tells us, but that's not who you really are, or you can't
Right.
really do that.
That's right.
And because I have those own stories in my life. And
Mhm.
so it's easy for us to take that conventional memory of
Mhm.
somebody else recognized me as a leader and at 19 years old put me in charge of a $600,000 store,
That's
which,
right.
as grown adults, we're looking back going, what are they thinking putting
I
kids in charge
know.
of all this merchandise?
I know.
It's like, how does retail survive?
I
Um,
know.
and yet it does because of people like you, when they see a leader in somebody that they've got. I didn't want to do retail. I did it for a while in between years in college, and I got the same speech, but I just was like, I hate this. I can't do it now.
Yeah,
Don't make me. I'm only doing this until I start back in the spring.
that's
And
right.
I mean, it was just so, and I was doing like 60 hours a week. It was just awful. But I loved that you said the little girl was confident and fun. And
Mhm.
I think that if there's a way, this is me just thinking out loud on my podcast here, but if there's a way to help women figure out and how to help the little girl stay
That's
in
right.
that moment, right?
Right.
And there's no way to prevent life from happening to us
That's
at
right.
all. But if we can figure out how to see that in the younger, to see that in the kids.
That's
And
right.
I have a son, so it can't only be about women, but I want for conversations like this to help us, like, you have at least one daughter, right?
I
Um,
do.
do you have a daughter and a son? I'm just being nosy now.
That's right. Yes, my daughter is the eldest of the two. She
Okay.
is 8.5, and that half is important.
Oh yeah.
And my son will be 3 this Saturday.
Oh, fun. Oh, that's
Hmm.
fun times.
Yes, it is.
But being able to look for you at your daughter and see yourself, at that age. I don't know what age you were standing, but this is just, I just love this idea that we could potentially do that for the next generation, that we
That's
could
right.
potentially help our children maintain that confidence and that
That's right.
fun. And so that's part of the reason I have these conversations and why I love them so much, because I also ask people, how's it shaped your mindset, or what are the stories or lessons that you've learned? But you gave it to me. You learned lessons like, even in the story, you learn lessons that leading people is just as important as making sure your inventory is all there,
Absolutely.
because you got to have it. Um,
Absolutely.
and so was that the moment that did you just take one gap year, or was that the moment that you kind of stepped in and thought, okay, I can do this. This is something I want to
Yes.
do. And now I'm going to like push forward and go back to school and do my thing.
So I, as a high school student, knew that I wanted to teach high school dance. My high school dance teacher, who it's October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month,
Yes, it is.
she actually found out that she had breast cancer when we were in high school. And so she was in and out, really just trying to take care of herself. But she was so good to us. She did not have a lot of formal dance training because that wasn't the requirement for dance teachers during that time. Dance education teachers earn their credentialing through the physical education programs. And so there
Okay.
was like one unit or a few units on dance, but that was her love. She was the dance teacher for the school for many, many years, and she was amazing. And what was amazing about her wasn't that, she could teach us how to do all the things in dance. It was her commitment to us. It was many of the things that I was describing that I did with my students. We never got to go out of town, but she would find opportunities for us to perform around the city, and just committed to the students. And I admired something about that. I'll never forget, they allowed us to dress up as one of the teachers for the day, and I chose her. And so I knew, as I was thinking about, gosh, what kind of adult job, as I ask kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could pick any adult job, what would that be? That's typically a line I use, and they seem to respond well to that when they're little. It would have been to be her. And
Mm.
so when I did decide to go back to school, which was not in 1 year, it was 5 years later. Um, I am the
I love this
Yep,
story.
that's right. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. My dad did not finish high school. And my mother, who is physically disabled, had a really hard time in school in general. And so, limited resources. I needed to work. I needed to pay for the vehicle
Mm-hmm.
that I was driving. And so I said, I'm going to work for the next 5 years, get my vehicle paid off, and then I can go to school and I'll have reliable transportation. So that's what I did. And
Girl, you're a planner.
I always have been. So yeah, so it was 5 years later.
Okay.
And actually a little bit before that, because when I got to the point where I was feeling a little bit more stabilized in my role as a store manager. So that was my first one that I mentioned. About 2.5 years later, they gave me a larger store. So when I left the company, I was running a $1.2 million store. It was a little bit closer to home. And so I started going to community college and just taking a class or two on my off day, and, just doing what I could. And then after about 30 credits of that, I'd been with the company for 5 years. I resigned, and then I enrolled in school full time.
I love this story. I mean, I don't always get people's college stories, but this is very apropos to your story and what you do now. And it's real easy for us to look at your multiple degrees and the fact that you've got a program called Culture for College. And it's real easy for us to think, yep, I bet she went boom, boom, boom. And so she's all about
Exactly.
education.
That's right.
And so this tells us that you have a really well-rounded and, you're right, unconventional story. Do you have a leadership principle that you kind of live by on a daily basis? Something that it's like, this is my motto, right?
Yes. I think if I had to sum it up, it's that relationships are important. Relationships are important. And it's really difficult to get much done without them.
Whew.
And so when I go into any relationship professionally, the goal is to really try to get to know the people that I'm working with, and let, how are you not be a greeting, but an actual question. And I have found that has been so helpful. It's given me a lot of latitude to make mistakes. It is much easier to make mistakes with people that you're in relationship with. It is easier to be transparent and vulnerable when you are in relationship with people. And as adults, I know that we show up with trust issues for a variety of different reasons. Some are personal, some are societally imposed. And it puts a lot of people almost on the defense.
Sure.
And so I have found success in just trying to humanize my experiences with people. You're right. People meet me. I meet people all the time, and they, I'm Dr. Brown at work. I've been Dr. Brown at work now for almost, going on 4 years. And people will assume, that I have this very traditional, right? There was a silver spoon somewhere and someone handed it to me, and gosh, but there's a lot more to it than what meets the eye. And, without running down my whole resume to people.
That would be very intimidating.
Oh gosh. Doing my part to humanize my interactions with people. I make mistakes. I have typos on things that I write on the occasion. I work really hard to try.
Yeah.
And so I think that humanizing the experiences, working to create relationships, real relationships, trying to get to know people and the things that motivate them at work and the things that excite them about the job and the things that frustrate them about the job. And then being honest about my own challenges, I have found make it much easier to work with people than otherwise.
Sure.
So that's I think about a conversation I just had with one of my direct reports yesterday, and she's new in our organization, and I took her to lunch. And that whole experience, she said, gosh, I've never had my supervisor's supervisor take me out to lunch before. And, I'm the one that is responsible for passing along professional development opportunities, for an example. I can't properly do that if I don't really spend the time to get to know the people that I'm working with. And I know, as I grow in leadership, it's not always possible. But if you set that up as a standard, then the people that are working under you start to develop that same sense of, let me really get to know the people that I'm connected with. Let me try to understand what some of their longer term professional goals are. And so then how can we create opportunities for them to pursue some of their passion projects while at work as well.
Yeah. So normally I ask people, how do I apply it? But you just gave me all of that. It's great. And, you know, I love the fact that you said it's a principle of relationships are important, but then you over and over use the word humanize.
Yep.
And one of the reasons I left higher education is because when you're in bigger schools, it becomes almost machine-like. And so for people who are in big organizations, it is difficult. I, as a supervisor, was one of those that was time pass along the opportunities, but so many of the people I worked with had been there for so long with no friend, let alone manager or supervisor, that had done that for them. And they just didn't even know, they didn't even have the mindset to think about how to do that.
That's right.
So do you find that this work that you do helping people be mentors for younger kids, do you find that that kind of bleeds into other areas of their lives, kind of like it, obviously it has for you, because you're mentoring this person that is you're their supervisor's supervisor, right?
That's right. And I'm thinking about the fact that I did continue to overemphasize this idea of humanizing the experience, you know, about being personable. I want to come back and revisit that just quickly, because I worked for the University of Colorado for 9 years. I'm still somewhat connected and will teach for them on the occasion if classes are available. And I very distinctly remember not loving the idea that students would often put me on some kind of a pedestal. Right? Oh my gosh, it's Dr. Brown. Like, I did not want to be a celebrity in the eyes of these students. I wanted them to understand that with hard work, planning, commitment, connecting with mentors, carving out your own space, having confidence, you too can be Dr. You fill in the Dr. Johnson, you, right? I mean, so I really wanted students to, if you were going to idealize anything, let it be the hard work, not some kind of position. And so it is my hope, you know, we talk about passing on the spirit of mentorship is what I can refer to it as. I really do hope that people do the same thing. You know, when you are, I've got several friends that are attorneys, for an example. And so when you meet a high school student who wants to be an attorney, it's okay to be honest with them about the parts of the job that are challenging, that are fun, that are exciting, that send you home in tears. So, you know, when I say humanize the relationships, in addition to being personable, I think it's also really important to be honest,
right?
And model that.
Yeah. And that is just basic role modeling, right?
That's
I mean, it really is. And I love talking to people about that, because we're role models, whether we think we are or not.
Absolutely.
Role models, whether we intend to be or not. And I think that the more we can understand that nobody really has to be perfect. Nobody really, and you don't have to be perfect to get ahead at all. I mean, look at every leader we've ever had.
That's right.
Don't need to be perfect.
That's right.
Sometimes you just need to be in the right place at the right time, but most of the time, especially for good leaders, it really is that applying the hard work and being intentional about it and moving forward that way. And everything that you've said to me, it's like, man, I go through and I talk about how I'm going to go through and I'm going to say, she lives out the intentional optimistic tenets this way. It's like, it's not going to be hard at all. But when you talk about planning and hard work and intentionality, what would be the habit that would keep you in this principle of humanizing or keeping your relationships? Is is it the fact that you humanize things, or is it more of something that you do on a daily basis that helps you remember, I got to keep relationships at the forefront?
I think it's over time. It has, I think it's wisdom over time that has reminded me that in the absence of relationships, you don't get much done. There's this African proverb that goes something like, if you want to go fast, go alone, right? If you want to go far, you have to go with others.
Right.
And people don't prefer to lead someone who seems detached and disconnected and not really ever interested in anything that they have going on. And so over time, I've just learned I have to slow down and actually mean, how are you today? And build in time in my day. We don't have to sit and chit chat for a long time, but to remember things about people, to ask them about the thing that I know they care about, and if they're making any progress toward a small goal that they may have. And so I think it's just the wisdom of time that has reminded me to do so more than something specific every day.
Okay. What I hear, what I've written down is this whole habit business is that just get to know people. I mean, because you can't ask them about something that's important if you don't know.
That's right.
And, I still have staff that I no longer work with that we will text back and forth, and I will say, how are your cats?
That's right.
Or, how did your driver do in the Formula One race this last weekend?
Right.
Or because that's what's important to those people. And if you don't know them, you can't ask them.
Exactly.
And it is amazing how many things will smooth over when you actually connect with someone over something that they think is important. It's not about me.
That's right.
I'm not a cat person.
That's right.
At all. I'm a dog person, but this other person, it's very important to them. Their cat.
That's right.
So
That's right.
I like that habit a lot. So for women who, let's say, haven't gone to college yet, or have gone to college and are working and doing something, you've started your own, actually, let's back up just a little bit. You started this new organization, Culture for College, when you moved. And I love that I make people, isn't that terrible? I make people fill out a form. And I say, tell me just a little bit of your story. And you said, by gift, I'm a visionary, right? Which tells me you could see things far into the future, or you could see things as they could be. And you moved out of state to a place where many of us would be like, you had a problem moving there? Can I say where you moved?
That's right. That's right.
So can we say where you moved? Is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. She moved to Oahu, Hawaii. And what's really funny is that when I was there, we laughed, we joked this summer. My son was playing out on the street in front of her house, and we had no idea. We were that close to each other.
That's right.
But anyway, you moved, and you actually had to go through a little bit of a grieving process, trying to figure it out. And you said you had 3 options. What were your 3 options again?
Yes. So my 3 options: moved here, as you were just stating, and had been working as the assistant dean for the University of Colorado for about 2 years, really loving the work I had an opportunity to do at the college, and was mourning the loss of that work. I did it for a little bit remotely, and would travel back, which I felt very privileged to be able to do. And then the whole world went virtual. So, so I kind of blended in with everyone else. But I remember feeling saddened by the fact that I couldn't do that exact work anymore. I really loved connecting with students around student success, and had a decision to make, right? I could either sit around and talk about everything that I wanted to do and how much I love the work, I could complain about not being able to do the work in the same way, or I could create something to actually be able to do something about it. And so I chose option C. And it really gave me space to form it and make it look exactly like I wanted it to look. And it's still evolving, it's still evolving. And so I took option C, and so here we are.
Which door would you like?
Exactly.
She chose door C.
I
And
chose Dorsey.
so let's talk here really quickly. If someone else finds themselves in a similar situation where they have the ability to sit there around and complain,
That's right.
or talk about lament how much they miss whatever it is that's not happening.
Exactly.
What are some green flags that they could look for to choose
Mhm.
option C of any kind of circumstance? I mean, because clearly you had something in your past that told you could do this. What
That's
were
right.
those kinds of things?
That's right. Well, it's anything that I started and then actually completed, right? I started high school, I completed it. I started my undergraduate degree program, I completed that. I started the dishes and I finished those. I mean, like
It doesn't have to be big.
it doesn't have to be big.
Yeah.
It's any, there were these indications in my life that reminded me, if I start this and I commit to it and I take a break from it when I need to, I will actually finish.
I like that.
And so I just went with that. I plugged away. You can actually still see some of the evidence on my wall behind me. I love my sticky notes.
I see them.
And so I just chipped away at it a little bit at a time. I remember writing articles, small articles, some opinion pieces, and really wanted to talk a little bit about this idea of connecting with children early and often, and couldn't exactly find the right space for that. If I were in my old job, right, I could have done something about it. I could have created a program where I would bring students to campus. Okay, I couldn't do that. What did I do? I wrote a children's book. No one could stop me from sitting at my computer and writing about it. And so it was in those moments that I said, you know what? Let me find a way to raise my voice. Let me create a way to raise my voice. And so I did.
Yay, you. I love that. Raise my voice. That's a good
That's
one.
right.
I want to completely put that in a positive spin, right? Because a lot of times we think raising your voice is a bad
I know.
thing,
That's
but
right.
we're elevating to raise our voices, elevating the voice.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
So if I love it, if we can look at that, I can start and give myself breaks and complete a project, even if it's the dishes, because sometimes those take me 2 days, whatever it is. And then I also put down here that you said plug away with little pieces and look at where you can pursue those things.
That's
so
right.
if there were some just 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of advice, what would the advice be for someone as they're kind of saying, okay, well, I can do those kind of things and I can do a little bit at a time?
For me, Culture for College has been something that has given me a space to talk about something I would absolutely do for free. And so I would say, if there are things in your life that you are willing to do, if no one paid you $1 to do them, then you found your sweet spot. So identify that first. That thing that you can get on a soapbox and talk about, I don't care where you are. That is an indication that that is something that is a deep-seated passion, and that energy will carry you a long way. It's not easy starting an organization, everything from the marketing and branding all the way through really trying to pinpoint and define who your actual audience is and what are you going to do once you launch whatever it is. There were long nights. There was a lot of planning. So I would say that would be the next step. Once you've identified what that area is that you want to focus on, start making a plan. And it doesn't have to be perfect. And the internet is beautiful because it gives you lots of templates for free.
Doesn't it? And even we're not using the video in this podcast right now, but the beautiful sticky notes on your board behind you, that can all be done online too. I mean, we use Google Jamboards in my coaching community, and we use all of that stuff. So my son, it's funny, like your son came home and he's like, yeah, on our Jamboard today. I'm like, oh, you use those too? Like, Mom, we've been using those for years. I'm like, oh, that's brand new to me.
Exactly.
But I tell you that it gives us the opportunity to put things up and move them around, and it doesn't have to be in stone, which is really, really helpful. So just using, like you said, with the high school students, use the technology that's available.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So tell us really quick, for people to find you, because you have 2 new gorgeous websites. You have a book that launches, it comes out when? Give us those details.
That's right. So my website, if you would like more information about me, big picture, you can visit my website at www.terainerbrown.com. It's my first and last name.com.
And we'll put that in the notes.
That's right. And then the Cultured for College organization can also be found at its name. So www.culturedforcollege.com. And
we can find you on LinkedIn.
You'll be able to find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram and also on YouTube.
Cool. Like everywhere.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
And the book is coming out when?
So the Milani Rose and Company series is a product of Cultured for College Kids. And Cultured for College Kids is all about encouraging adults to have conversations with the children in their lives about college and career success. And I wrote this fun book series where this little girl, she's 10, she has a couple of friends, and she sketches out a couple of career choices. So at their school, October is Career Month. And as they are introduced to new careers, the little girl, Milani is her name, has the brightest idea to go and explore this pathway. And so her and her friends over lunch, they dive into this magic sketchbook. And when they come out on the other side, they are in that job. And so this book series will cover all career paths. And I just started with a couple in this first book. So I'm having a lot of fun with it.
That sounds exciting. And that's a November.
That's in November. So the book and all the rest of the products will be officially available Black Friday.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
That's a good day.
That's right. But pre-sales, we'll have our pre-sales coming up here in the next couple of weeks. So keep your eye on the website. There's information about Milani Rose and Company on both the Terainer Brown and the Cultured for College site.
I've seen them. They're adorable.
Thank you.
Did you do your own illustrations?
I hired out all of it.
They're adorable. They're really cute. And as a mom of a 12, almost 13-year-old, those aren't going to work necessarily, but but still, it's good to know that we can have these conversations to maybe go back to the girl who's standing in front of the classroom in her grandmother's basement and be able to say, what could you do? Who could you be? And I'll bet that little girl didn't know that she was going to be Dr. Terainer Brown.
Did not know it.
Yeah. And here you are. That's great. Right. And you're making a difference in how many other children's lives. And you are telling me earlier that right now, Cultured for College, this is not a product. This is not a paid program. This is an educational piece that we can all have access to, that we can all learn from. And so this is really exciting.
That's right. And the bottom line is, if adults would just take a few minutes with the kids that are around them, and, you've got a lot of experience in working with and developing leaders in entrepreneurship, for an
Mhm.
example, and you meet someone at the grocery store who is selling something that they made, take a few minutes and encourage them.
Mm.
Take a few minutes and say, hey, that's a really great idea. I've actually started my own business, and here's some fun things that, I've learned along the way, or can I offer you a piece of advice?
Mm.
Adults really do love to talk about the work that they do, and kids are actually interested. It is not always, though, that children have an opportunity to engage with adults in real conversations. And so that cross-generational talk is really powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that we can learn a lot from each other in those moments.
Yeah. And I think it's harder now than it used to be.
Mhm.
Kids used to roam the streets, talk to adults all the time.
I
Not so much
know.
anymore. It's
That's
not a safe
right.
thing to do.
That's
But
right.
even just down at the beach we were down there earlier in September. This older gentleman he had this amazing little contraption that he was digging. My son likes to hunt for shells. And so in Hawaii, he was very disappointed because it's lava around. So he
That's right.
was like, where are all the shells?
That's right.
But turns out this guy had this thing, he was hunting shark's teeth. And so he was like showing
Wow.
Nathan how to hunt shark's teeth. And I'm like, I had to tell Nathan, ask him where he got that thing,
That's
because he had this
right.
little tool. So it's really, really smart. Before we wrap up, thank you so much. Is there anything I missed? Did I leave anything out?
No, I think we covered it all.
That's
I
not
think we
possible.
covered it all.
We'll have more conversations, but
Yes, we will.
so if there was one thing that people knew that you were always going to be optimistic about, even though, or maybe they don't know this about you, but if they did know it about you, they would think you were crazy. What is the one thing that you can always be optimistic about?
Is that hard work really does pay off.
Does it really? See, it's like I'm going, you're crazy.
I mean, it does. It
Okay.
may not pay off in the exact way that you were thinking it's going to,
Ding, ding. There you go.
but it does pay off. I mean, I think about the amazing opportunity I have right now working with the Air Force. And I remember working so hard through my PhD program thinking, gosh, one day I'll get a faculty job. One day I'll get a faculty job. One day I'll get a faculty job. And that it didn't work out that way.
Mm.
But another really great opportunity did. And so stay open and have faith in the fact that hard work really does pay off.
It's a good thing to be optimistic about, because we hear people say it all the time. And I think, like me, many are a little jaded about that, but maybe it's because and I say this all the time, change your expectations.
That's
Because
right.
the expectation is the hard work is going to pay off in the way we expect it to.
Exactly. That's
And
exactly right.
it doesn't necessarily. So
That's right.
thank you so much. This has been delightful. I look so
Absolutely.
forward to getting to know you better and hearing more about you. I love making new friends. Everybody I interview is a new friend. So
That's
thank
right.
you, my
That's
friend
right.
Terainer. I love this.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to your book coming out, and we'll definitely be talking again in the future.
Well, thank you so much, Andrea. I really appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to share with you today.
Thanks so much.